Recently, reports have emerged that the United States has named sponsors of terrorism linked to Nigeria. That means the US government is pointing fingers at individuals and networks allegedly financing or supporting terrorist groups in our country. The implication is serious. It affects security, diplomacy, money flows, and how we are perceived globally. So first, what do we know for sure? We know that the US has long treated the group Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization. We also know they have sanctioned individuals who help to raise funds, facilitate logistics for Boko Haram. These are real actions. Now, the new element in the headline, USA names sponsors of terrorists in Nigerian states touched by Samamst, suggests a fresh or expanded list. While I couldn't locate a publicized list today exactly matching that headline, we do see precedent. In March 2022, the US Treasury sanctioned 6 Nigerians for raising funds in the UAE to support Boko Haram. So this may be an extension or update of that kind of action. What this means for Nigeria? If the US publicly names sponsors, we face multiple layers of impact. Financial, the named individuals or networks may have assets frozen, restrictions placed. If they operate internationally, their networks suffer. Security, it intensifies the pressure on terrorist groups' funding lines. That's good, but it also may force them to change tactics, stealth operations. Diplomatic, C, political. Nigeria's government will be expected to show that it's taking action, investigating, prosecuting, disrupting these networks. If that doesn't happen, Nigeria may face more pressure or even consequences. Aid, partnerships, image, domestic. These naming acts may raise public awareness of how terrorism is being financed in Nigeria. It could lead to internal investigations, accountability for those who might be complicit. Let me also add this. There are underlying issues we've known for a long time. Boko Haram, for example, launched attacks on schools, civilians, made alliances, and continues to be resilient despite government efforts. So, naming financiers is necessary, but it is not sufficient alone. For you at home, what to pay attention to? Who is named? When the full list comes out, if publicly released, check. Are they Nigerians? Are they linked to government or private actors? Are they overseas? What evidence? The US will need to show financial trails, links. That means bank records, transfers, shell companies. What Nigerian authorities do? Will the government act? Will there be arrests, prosecutions? Will policy change? Broader ramifications. For business, for normal citizens, for foreign investment. If Nigeria is seen as a country where terror money flows unchecked, that hurts everyone. Now a twist. This could also involve regional states and states in the headline. Could mean that states within Nigeria or beyond Nigeria's border are being implicated, or US states, less likely. If Nigerian states are involved, this gets more delicate. Federal versus state governance jurisdiction issues. Let's talk about why the US might do this now. A few reasons. They see an uptick in violent attacks in Nigeria and the region, so they escalate pressure. They are leveraging sanctions as a tool to reduce terrorism funds globally. They want to signal to Nigeria and neighboring countries that they are serious about terror financing transparency. It could also be tied to US domestic politics, showing action on the global terror front. For Nigeria, maybe this serves as a wake-up call to tighten financial regulation, oversight of charities, money flows, donor networks, etc. What should Nigeria do in response? From a responsible standpoint, conduct thorough investigations into the named individuals, networks. Strengthen financial regulation, banks, integrity of money transfers, cross-border flows. Cooperate with US and international partners, sharing intelligence, following trails, engage communities. Terror financing often happens under the radar, often via informal networks, local sympathizers. Strengthen preventive measures. Security forces tracking money is good, but also addressing root causes. Poverty, marginalization, ideology remains crucial. Let's link this to you and me, the average Nigerian. Perhaps you're thinking, this is politics, big guys, not me. Actually, this matters because money that funds terror also undermines development, public safety. If a terror group gets funded, it attacks schools, markets, civilians. That can be your family, your community. If the government has to divert resources to security instead of school books, repair of roads, health services, we all lose. Also, there could be new laws or regulations emerging. Maybe more scrutiny on transfers, extra ID checks, more regulation of NGOs or charities. So if you work in finance, you do business cross-border, you may need to be more aware. Now, a caveat. While the headline is bold, always approach with caution. These naming acts may be allegations subject to legal processes. Just because the US names someone doesn't mean they'll necessarily be convicted locally. There's often legal diplomatic wrangling. Also, the US may not publish full evidence. And Nigeria's sovereignty means sometimes things get complex. Let me illustrate with past example. In March 2022, the US Treasury sanctioned 6 Nigerians who were convicted in the UAE of supporting Boko Haram. So that set a precedent. Now, if we imagine this new listing is broader, perhaps more persons, more funding networks, maybe across Nigerian states, it could mark a new phase. So, when the US comes out to name people allegedly involved in sponsoring terror in Nigeria, it's not just gossip. It means they've been tracking money trails, communications, and suspicious transactions for months, sometimes even years. Now, according to reports, the United States Treasury and State Department usually work hand in hand on these kinds of designations. They don't just wake up and name people. They have to confirm that the individuals or entities have provided financial or material support to a known terrorist organization. Once that happens, those people are blacklisted internationally. They can't access global banking systems, can't travel freely, and their assets in foreign countries are frozen. Let's think of what this means for Nigeria's internal politics. You see, when these names come out, some may have powerful connections, business people, politicians, or middlemen. If any of them are linked to particular states, it can create serious tension. Imagine a situation where a sitting or former government official or even a known businessman from a particular region gets mentioned. That will shake the table. And the truth is, many Nigerians have been saying this for years, that terrorism cannot survive without insider support. That's why people always ask, how do terrorists get weapons, vehicles, and food in remote areas? Someone supplies it, and someone pays for it. Now, this move by the US might be seen as a way of pushing Nigeria to act more decisively. Because let's be honest, we've had reports before of some suspects being arrested for aiding terrorism, but after a few weeks, the case goes quiet. You and I stop hearing about it. So maybe this is the US saying, enough is enough. But there's another side to this. Some people argue that these international sanctions can sometimes be politically motivated. They say the US might use it as leverage in diplomacy, especially when it wants more cooperation from Nigeria on regional security, trade, or human rights. So we must keep an open mind and wait for verified details. At the same time, this story brings back the memory of when the UAE arrested and convicted some Nigerians in 2020 for funding Boko Haram. That was the first real international case that showed how terror money flows abroad. Money leaves Nigeria, goes through foreign bank accounts or businesses, and then ends up funding violence back home. Now, this new naming could be building on that. Maybe new names, new networks, new states. If so, then Nigeria's government will have no choice but to respond openly because the world will be watching. Let's talk about what this could mean for ordinary Nigerians. When things like this happen, financial institutions in Nigeria usually tighten their rules. You may notice banks asking more questions about international transfers, NGOs facing more scrutiny, and even local donations being tracked more closely. It can be uncomfortable, but it's part of the global effort to stop terror financing. Another important thing we have to consider is how this affects Nigeria's image abroad. Investors pay attention to this type of news. When a country is linked with terrorism sponsorship, even indirectly, it scares away foreign investment. People don't want to put their money in a system that's seen as risky or unstable. Now, let's also touch on something related. The general insecurity that's been affecting different parts of the country. You know, from kidnappings on highways to attacks in villages. Sometimes people wonder, where do these attackers get the courage and equipment to keep going? This could be one of the missing pieces, external or internal funding. If the US truly names sponsors and Nigeria acts quickly, we might finally see some improvement. It could disrupt those financial pipelines that keep violence alive. But if Nigeria plays politics with it, then sadly, the suffering will continue. Let's be honest, many Nigerians are tired of hearing about killings, bombings, and kidnappings. We want peace, but peace won't come if the money behind the violence is not stopped. That's why stories like this one are so important. I also want to say this. Sometimes these kinds of developments bring opportunities. The Nigerian government can use this moment to show the world that it is serious about fighting terrorism, that it is transparent and willing to work with international partners. That can restore some global trust and maybe even bring support and investment. But for that to happen, there must be real action, not just press releases or committee meetings. We need to see arrests, investigations, and transparent court processes. So, as we follow this story, the key things to watch out for in the coming days are: will the US officially publish the names? How will Nigeria's government respond? Will there be any arrests or asset freezes locally? How will the Nigerian public react if familiar names appear? This story is still developing, and I'll keep monitoring it as it unfolds. Remember, if you're watching right now and you've not liked the video yet, please go ahead and click that like button and subscribe to the channel so you'll always get updates when I drop a new gist. Now let's move into the next part. What could be the deeper political and security implications for Nigeria and neighboring countries if these names become public and sanctions follow?